guys, and welcome back here to the Dev Realm, and today we have a nice tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about input system. Alright, so it's going to be a very short one, but this is recently Unreal Engine 5 has introduced this new system for input system. Which, especially if you didn't start it, you have no idea what I'm talking about. This is just a brand new feature that they added not long ago, but it makes your games, it also makes you maintain your inputs much more easier, right? So this is going to be a quick one. So the way you actually use this new input system is really simple. So if you go to the third person template, in the third person folder, we have a folder called inputs. And as you can see here, we have this weird thing called IMC default, right? And this thing here basically it's just the input mapping context, is what keys you want to use to control your character or things like that, right? The way this thing works is really simple. As you can see here, that we have the jump, move, and then lock. So look, sorry. The look is basically what the player used for the player to look around. As you can see here, we already have gamepad default set up. We have the move, which is WSD. We also have the up, down, and the arrows as well in the gamepad. And then you have the jump in here, right? And the way you create those mappings is just by adding the plus button there, but you need to select the data asset input action that you want to use it. The way you actually can create those input actions is very simple. You just go back in here, just well, you can just right click in that, go to input, and then you create an input action. All right, so in this case, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create an input action that when I press, it will spawn a cube. All right. So it could be as well, like let's say in the future, you could do something like you create an input action that when the players interact with an item or something like this. All right. So I'm gonna call this EA action player or something like this, right? Okay. Now, when you open up this, we don't really need to check. Like, there's a couple of. If you check here, we're not gonna change anything. We're just gonna leave the way it is, right? There's nothing no features that we're adding here. One thing I do recommend is just to add your descriptions in them. Just a nice way to keep a project organized, but okay. Nice, so we're gonna add this new input system here. All right. And if you check the last key here, it's gonna ask us to find this object that we just created. So in my case is the first one. It's called EA action player. So I'm gonna click in there. Cool. Now we need to set up what keys do you want this to be interactable with, right? So in my case right now, I'm gonna press in the keyboard and I'm gonna press E, right? So it knows that I press the key. But in the future, let's say you're trying to create some kind of I don't know, a multiplayer game or like a PlayStation 5 game or something. So you just press in this button in here, right? That will give you another key, and then you can select, for example, Steam key. You could use gamepad key. I think the best way is always to, you plug your controller to the engine, and then you just press the key you want, and then you know how it will react. But this is how you probably you would manage, those very complex controllers. And the cool thing about this, which is really cool, is that before, just to give you some context, before Unreal Engine, the way you used to do this is that you used to go to File, to the project settings. You used to go here to where is it, Inputs, and then you used to manage those axes in here. Right, but as you can see, Unreal Engine has changed this, so it creates in game. Because what you can do with this is next time you start a new project, right, a new game, all you gotta do, you just go to this folder, you right click, you press migrate, and then you copy this to a new project, and that's it. The whole thing works. So it's very, very powerful, very easy to use. But let's go back to our tutorial. Let's make sure that we know how to use this. Right. Okay, so now if I go here to the third person player, I'm gonna go where is the blueprint. I'm gonna open up the player here, right? And if you check here, the Unreal Engine default already does that for us. So as you can see here, it gets the controller, it calls this enhanced input player subsystem, make sure it's valid, and then we add in the new mapping controller. So Unreal Engine already does this for us, and you see this in the first player, in the top down. You would see this in the car controller, that the demo template that comes with it. So you would see all those methods coming up. This is the way you actually add your input system, right? About the casting here, you could use the interface in this case to do this, and then once you have the reference of your controller, you can just do the same logic. You can even do as well, which is really cool here, is that let's say, let's just make this a little bit more dynamic, is that eventually games, they have multiple controllers and multiple things for different areas. So let's say, for example, Red Dead Redemption, when you are inside a bar playing poker in the game, you're going to have a different controller than when you are in the survival game shooting, right? The way you can actually manage this is just by the priority here, right? So let's say you could copy and paste this, right? You could come in here to the drop down. Let's say you have another option in here. The way you can actually create this, okay, just to explain how you can create this IMC default is just right clicking that, you go to input and you create another mapping input. But because of the purpose of our game, this is really not the case, but this is how you create another one. And then if you have like a game that requires multiple controllers, you just bump the priority to 1. This will be the priority and this will be not, and then you guys get the idea from that, right? So, okay, now that we have this thing loaded, how can we use the input system? If you check here, already give us some examples of how can we use that. But the best way to do here is just that once you know the name, which is AI action player, I'm gonna right click in that, AI action player, and I'm gonna call the enhanced action event, all right? And here, remember that we start to use press V for everything or press B for things. Now we can use the same, but now using the input that we can dynamically change as the game progresses. Okay, so now how can I use this to trigger stuff? So this thing is quite cool. There's some behaviors in here that they could be quite complex, but basically for things that, let's say you're trying to create, like this example here is the best one, like when you're trying to jump and once it's completed. So this basically is when you press the key, and this is when you unpress the key. So let's say, okay, so let's create a print here, and in here I'm gonna say action press, and once it's completed, I'm gonna call action unpress or something like this. Now if I press play, when I press E, action is press, and when I left, the action is unpress, right? But as you can see, the trigger, it keeps triggering. It's because you are, that thing keeps running because you just have pressed the key. So what happens if you want to just press one time? What do you do here? Just plug it in that, and it started. You compile and save here, and then you go one time. Yep. And then you have more events here that normally you don't use them very often, but you have ongoing, console, you have the action map, the value, and then you have the input action. There you can use this object reference to do more stuff. You have some more options in here. How long have you held it? Let's say if you're trying to create some kind of a combo, you could do something like, I don't know, like based on the time. So I'm being holding for like 1 second, 2 seconds, boom. All right. So I hold this for 3 seconds and 61 milliseconds. So you could do some kind of a combo based on that. Let's say you're doing a weapon that does damage and things like this, right? And then from here, you could just, you know, call something that in this case spawn cube, like, so you could just do this. Yeah, so if I press here, you know, I press E, I start to spawn stuff on the server. Oh yeah, I can spawn this on the server because I don't have access to the player controller. It's because I took the player controller, but let's do this from scratch. So we could do something like this. So when you start, what you do is spawn actor from class. We're gonna get a cube reference, and we're gonna just press compile and save, and there you go. So when the player does stuff, you can press the cubes, right? So yeah, it's a really cool thing. It's a really nice feature that this input system is really powerful. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it. Hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial. It's a simple one, but I hope it gives you some idea of how can you organize your project inputs. So see you guys in the next video.